Okay, so today I'm going to go over the basics of nutrition. Let's get into it. So to start, I have I think it's what is it, four, just basic nutrition tips that aren't anything specific. Then I'm going to go into the three macronutrients, which I know that word sounds big and scary if you don't know what it means, but it's just going over proteins, fats, and carbs and things you need to know about them. So first, to eat healthy, one of the easiest things you can do is just eat whole foods. If you know what a whole food is it's basically just something that wouldn't have like an ingredient list. Like if you go to buy any fruit or veggie, there isn't an ingredient list on what's in it. It's just that. The ingredient list on a tomato is tomato. That's it. There's nothing else in it. So that's just like a simple thing. You would want to lend towards buying organic produce and whole foods, just because then you're not going to get a lot of those chemicals or pesticides or whatever they've been using to make that stuff. Obviously, if you can't afford to do that and you just want to buy the regular whole foods, go for that. That's still going to be healthier than processed foods. That goes into the next one, which is the less processed food you eat, the better. So obviously, some of us might not be willing to, or for whatever other reason, be willing to completely cut out processed foods. So just try and minimize it. Honestly, simple as that. Not all of us are trying to be elite level athletes and in elite level health. So just minimize the amount of processed foods you're having. So the next thing is, I forget who I heard say this. I think I've heard it a couple times now though, but when you're looking at the ingredients list for something that might be a little processed, ideally, you want to be able to say everything on the ingredients list. What I mean by that is if you look at some of these ingredients lists, like I'll pop one up right here, I can't read some of these words. Like I don't know what they mean. I have no clue what that is in my food. So ideally, just like an easy rule of thumb is to like try and pick items that only have maybe one thing you can't say or nothing that you can't say. You want to ideally know what everything in your food is. I also heard someone say like a great rule of thumb for however much you're willing to do this with is ideally whatever item you're buying, you should be able to buy the ingredients to make it in the supermarket. So if you can't, that lets you know it's probably something fake or something processed, whatever it is, right? And then along with that is if something wasn't an option to be bought, like let's say 150 years ago, you probably shouldn't eat it. Like that means it's pretty processed. Like Oreos weren't real 100 years ago. Not a good thing to eat. Strawberries, those were a thing 100 years ago. That's something you can eat. So that's just like a simple breakdown of how to basically like go about shopping at a supermarket and like just like some basic stuff, which I feel like that's pretty like rudimentary stuff that most people know. Like obviously you don't want the processed food and the whole foods are just better. And honestly, I feel like when I eat more of a whole food diet, I do feel better too. So with that said, if you see me looking over here, I have my notes over here. So the first one I'm going to go over is a protein. And the first stat I have about protein is that it is 4 calories per gram. So what that means, and I have that stat for carbs and fats as well of how many calories per gram it is. It basically means if you had 1 gram of protein, how many calories would it be? So it lets you know how calorically dense each item is. So the main role of protein is it builds and repairs muscle, tissue, enzymes, and hormones. So protein is very much needed in your body. You need it for, as I just said, building muscle, tissue, enzymes, hormones. Protein is the building block of like all of the cells in your body. Protein is extremely important. So there is 20 different types of proteins. There is 11 types of protein that your body actually produces on its own. And you can eat those as well. Those are in the foods. But then there's 9 what are considered essential proteins, which you have to get through food. So there's the 11 that your body makes on its own, and then there's the 9 that you have to get from food. Those two add up, and you get to those 20 different types of protein. So with those 9 essential ones, as I said, you have to be getting from food. And at the end, I'm going to provide a couple healthy options. So ideally, what's considered like a high protein diet would be eating 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight. There and up is about where you're going to be able to see good muscle growth and good progress in the gym. So just quickly, whatever your body weight is, multiply by 0.7. That's about how much protein you should be eating a day. If you want like a rough estimate, for every 100 pounds you weigh, it should be 70 grams of protein. So I'm about 200 pounds right now. It should be 140 grams of protein at a minimum a day. That's just like an easy rule of thumb. A lot of times, if you listen to people in the fitness industry, they're going to tell you to eat more protein than that. But that's typically like the low level rule of thumb. That's like the minimum. So some healthy options are going to be chicken, red meat, fish, and then eggs and dairy. I put in like a kinda section because eggs aren't individually high protein, but when you have a lot of them together, it can give you a serviceable amount of protein. Because like, for instance, like a chicken breast, like a 4-ounce chicken breast is gonna, I can't remember if it's 20 or 22 grams of protein, one of the two. But a singular egg it's either 6 or 7 grams of protein. So if you have a multiple eggs, yes, and like the same thing with dairy, where like in one serving, it's not a lot of protein, but if you use a lot of said items, the eggs or the dairy, you can get solid amount of protein. Another one would be like a Greek yogurt, but anything like that is good protein sources. And then ideally, as in the percentage of your diet, you ideally want protein to be about 20 to 30% of your diet. So what that means is you typically want 20 to 30% of the calories you consume in a day to be protein. And that probably sounds really weird and confusing, but if you use like a calorie tracking app, it typically has like a macronutrient breakdown, and like it'll basically like explain to you where your calories are coming from. And that's typically where I range. I typically probably go closer to like, if I had to estimate, probably like 27% of my diet's from protein. But that's pretty much everything on protein, as in like a very basic low level breakdown. Okay, so the next thing is carbs. Now carbs are also 4 calories per gram. No, carbs are not bad for you. What is bad is certain types of carbs, and just making sure you're selecting the right types of carbs as your carb sources. So the main role of carbs is they're basically just a fuel source for you, especially during exercise, and that is technically if you do consume them, because technically you can do what's called a keto diet, and that's basically like a no carb diet. And what that does is it puts your body in ketosis and you're running on ketones. And personally, I'm not really a big fan of it, but it definitely does work for some people out there, and everyone's different. So if it works for you, good for you. But going back to carbs, there are 2 different types of carbs. There is simple and complex. So a couple examples of simple, which is sugars, fruit, and candy. And these are what are called fast digesting carbs. So your body basically uses up the fuel source very quickly and does it very fast. The other option is, or other type, is called a complex carb. So these are more slow digesting, and a couple examples would be like rice and potatoes. So slow digestion carbs also tend to be more rich in fiber. So that is another thing. Basically, the difference is just the digestion speed, as far as I know. There's probably deeper levels to it, but just at like a surface level, that's all you really need to know. So overall, some healthy options for carbs are rice, fruits, veggies, other things, obviously, but those are just a couple examples. So one quick thing about carbs is I remember for a while I was just having 6 eggs for breakfast, so just like straight protein for breakfast, and then I would go to the gym. And when I left the gym, I would be exhausted. So obviously I'm gonna be physically tired, I just worked out, but I was mentally drained. Like I remember taking the SAT in high school, it felt just like that, how you're just like mentally drained afterwards. And that's what I felt like all the time. And then I realized it was because I wasn't having any carbs. So my workout I didn't have the proper fuel in my body to be working out. So I added in some fruit and some honey. Honey's another good carb source. And over a bowl of Greek yogurt. And I have so much more energy now, especially after the gym. I will say my workouts don't feel a crazy amount different, but it's just like that after effect of like, I'm not just drained for the next couple hours of the day. So as I told you, with protein was 20 to 30%. Carbs, on the other hand, should be 40 to 60% of your diet. And the reason these are all ranges is because it depends. If you're doing like a high protein and high fat diet, you're gonna have less carbs. If you're doing high protein, high carb, you're gonna have less fat. Like you can only get to 100% so many different ways. So that's why it's in like a range and not just like an exact number. So with that said, let's head to the last macronutrient, fats. Okay, so fats are different than carbs and protein in the sense that they are 9 calories per gram. So what that lets you know is fats tend to be the most calorically dense items that you're going to eat. So the main role of fats is long-term energy storage, brain function, hormone production, and vitamin absorption. So obviously all of these three things, fats, proteins, and carbs, all have a role in the body. So a couple healthy fats would be unsaturated fats like olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, and then fatty fishes. And then unhealthy fats, these are going to be trans fats specifically, you want to try and entirely avoid. And then there's saturated fats, which you just want to limit the amount of them that you're having. And if you are curious how to know what's in what, just look at the ingredient labels, it will tell you. And if you're not sure, there is an app called Trash Panda, which I actually just downloaded and like just starting to use. And you scan it, it will tell you like things you need to know about items of food. You just scan the barcode like when you're in the supermarket and tell you what you should and shouldn't buy based on like just like trying to be healthy. That is definitely way deeper than this stuff, but in case you're interested. So a couple healthy options for fats would be avocados, olive oil, nuts, seeds, fatty fish. Examples of fatty fish would be like salmon or sardines. So those are a bunch of the options for fats that you can consume. And no, fats do not make you fat. They just happen to have the same name. Unfortunately, that is just such like a poor design. Whoever picked these names clearly should have done it differently, because fats do not make you fat. They are actually, you need them. You should be eating fats in your diet. So fats should probably be about 20 to 30%. They're like proteins of your diet. So with that said, I'm going to give you guys a couple, that's like the just facts of the facts from my research and things I've known. But now what I want to do is give you guys a little bit of like my personal spin on these. So obviously those are the things, but then what can you do with that information? So personally, I follow and try and eat a lot more of like these whole foods that I've been talking about and things like that when I am cutting. Because typically a lot of these items tend to be lower in calories. So when you're cutting, it's a lot easier to stick with these. But whereas when I'm bulking, it can be a lot harder because I just need the excess calories. Because I have a very high maintenance calories. So I need to eat a lot to bulk, like more than most people. Now, I wouldn't say more than most people, but like for my size, I have to eat more than what other people would. So with that, that's why typically I will stray away a little bit, but that's me straying away. So I still do typically eat like mostly whole food. I still try and keep it to that, but I will allow myself like some other foods. Whereas like when I'm cutting, I'm just a lot more dialed in with it. So, and that kind of goes along with like literally my next bullet point literally says my healthy is very healthy compared to other people. Like most people, if they were switched to eating healthy, would eat the way that I eat now while I'm bulking. And for me, it's unhealthy. But it's also understanding that like for me, I do so much when I am really dialed that if I'm only doing 80% of it, I'm still doing more than most people, which is a good place to be, because it means even if I'm like not doing everything perfect, I still know I'm doing more than most and getting a good chunk out of it. So another thing is understanding your own goals, because right now, obviously I want to be healthy, as you guys can tell, but my main focus is on putting on size right now. So I'm willing to eat some of these less healthy foods so that I can eat more calories and put on size. That's something that I'm prioritizing right now. Once I have the size that I want, I'll probably just eat like a very regular diet. I won't be bulking or cutting anymore. I'll just kind of be where I'm at, eat healthy most of the time. But right now, while I'm still trying to put on a lot of size, I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit in like that health area and eat some unhealthier foods to allow me to achieve my goals. And as I said, at some point that will likely switch. But that's a very basic level of nutrition. There are also micronutrients, which it's much easier to get your micronutrients if you're just eating a whole foods diet. So that's one of the other reasons I recommend that, because there are a lot more micronutrients. Macronutrients, there's just 3. It's a lot easier and simpler, and I understand it a lot more. Micronutrients, on the other hand, I'm not as well versed in. That's why I didn't really go into them too deeply. But from my understanding, if you just eat a colorful, and whole foods diet. And by colorful, I mean change the colors of your veggies. Make sure you're having like purple, orange, red, green, yellow. Those are like a lot of the typical colors you can see when you're going to get your veggies. Like you can get like a squash, that would be purple, carrots would be orange, green, like broccoli, lettuce. Maybe have some cauliflower because that's white. Yellow and red peppers, things like that. Like just trying to do that, and that will kind of allow you to hit a lot of your micronutrient basis. You also can supplement for some of those things, but overall, this is like a very basic level understanding of nutrition that you guys can have. I was talking about Calorie Tracker earlier. I have no affiliation in any of them, but I will say I have used MyFitnessPal for years. At this point, I kind of know the amount of calories that are in the things I eat, so I don't really track as much anymore. But you can use that to track the calories, and it'll give you an understanding of how much protein, carbs, fats, and it also has the micronutrient breakdown of like everything you're eating, and it's pretty user-friendly too. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you can take this information, and now that you have a better understanding of nutrition, maybe adapt your diet a little bit, be a little bit healthier, feel a little bit better. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and catch you next Sunday at 5 p.m. Catch you there.